we are discussing about PHP and MySQL. In today's discussion, we are going to talk about cookies and sessions. I think many of you are already familiar with these terms like cookies and sessions. And when you are actually browsing um, or actually surfing the internet, you see these things. So basically, by cookies and session, you retain some of your information, right? So even if you're not familiar, that's fine. Um, so why do we need cookies and sessions? The HTTP, which we use to browse the internet, is the protocol that HTTP protocol or HTTPS protocol, which we use to connect to the internet servers. This protocol is actually a stateless technology. That means each HTML page is actually an unrelated entity. So HTTP itself has no method for tracking the users or retaining variables as a person traverses a site. And without the server being able to track a user, there can be no shopping carts or custom website personalization. But using a server-side technology like PHP, you can overcome the statelessness of the web. And the two best PHP tools for this purpose are cookies and sessions. Now, there is a key difference between cookies and sessions. The main difference is cookies store data in user's browser, and sessions store data on the server itself. Sessions are generally more secure than cookies and can store much more information. So because both the technologies are easy to use with PHP, today I'm going to cover both of them, but I will show you examples with cookies, and if I have time, I will show you examples with sessions as well. Otherwise, the session example will be just like the cookies. So if you understand how the cookies are working, you can go through the example files for the session and practice it yourself. Okay, so why do we need cookies and sessions? One simple example is if you want to log into a website, right? Uh, Logging in means, suppose you are logging into Amazon.com. If you don't have cookies and sessions, what happens is when you transfer from one HTML page to another, the next page will forget you, right? It won't have any trace of you. So if you want to do it in one session, or if you want Amazon to recognize you until you are there, you actually need to use cookies and session. So for that, what do? You do a login in the website, right? So when you go to Amazon.com, you do the login. So how the login process works? So first of all, whenever you go to Amazon or Google, whenever you go to the login page, there is a form for submitting the login information. Then once you submit, put your suppose email, password, everything, there is a validation routine that confirms the necessary information that was submitted. And after the validation is done, a database query that compares the submitted information against the stored information. So you are logging into Gmail or Amazon means that already you have an account, and through a form you send your username, password, other things. After the initial validation means suppose you just put your email, you haven't put any password, so that fails in the validation itself. Okay, but if you have put your email, both your email and the password, then the validation will pass. Then it will check your information, whatever information you have put, against whatever information is stored in the database. um, and meanwhile, cookies and sessions will store the data that reflects a successful login. So if your login is successful, Then cookies and sessions will actually store the data so that until you don't log out, that data is used to keep you logged in. Okay, so I will show you some PHP pages that we are going to show for today's example. Okay, so first of all comes the login page .inc.php. This is the script that creates the complete login page, including the form, reporting any errors. So it will be included by other pages that need to show the login page. Okay, so let us go and show you. Already I have the servers running, PHP server and the MySQL server. Then I have my files, the example files already put in week 11. This is a new PHP project, and I'm going to share the code with you so that you can actually run the PHP scripts yourself and do the practice. So the first file I was talking about was the login page inc, right? So this is the login page. So there, this is the PHP file. First of all, we have a variable page title. We call it login, and then we include two things. First of all, include header.html and footer.html. Okay, like the previous week's examples is the similar kind of thing. And then this page checks if the errors variable is already set or and errors is not empty. That means there is some errors. If there is some errors, then it will show you error. It won't let you log in. Otherwise, what it will do is it will show you, if that is not true, actually not that. Okay, so if there is some errors, it will show you the errors, and then below it will show you this file login.php. Not login.php. It will show you email, password, 3 fields, email, password, and then a button, submit. Once you click submit, it will go to login.php. Okay, let us show you the login.php. That means login page.inc.php. This one first checks for errors. If there is errors, it will show you error messages. And then below it will show you 2 fields, one for email address, one for password, and then one for submit, one button for submit. And once you click the submit, it will trigger the login.php. Okay, let's go to login.php and see what happens here. Okay, so in login.php, you see it's very simple. First of all, it checks if the page is already submitted, right? So server request method equals to post means, what does it mean? It means that already this submit button has been clicked, right? Okay, so it will check if the page already has been submitted. If it's submitted, then it does this thing, does something. We'll talk about it later. If it is not submitted, then it will just show you the login page. Okay, so let's go and see here. Okay, so I already have it here. So this is login.php. So there are 2 ways to come to login.php. Okay, so what's happening here? When I'm loading login.php, let's go to see what's happening. So this request method is not post yet because we haven't submitted anything. So it goes directly here, and what does it show? It shows login page incorporation, right? .php. Okay, so basically we're seeing this thing. We're seeing this thing here, right? So we are seeing not only this thing, we are seeing three things. First of all, we are seeing login PHP. We're seeing what? Yeah, so you're seeing actually this include login page incorporation.php. So, okay, so inside that we're seeing header, some form elements, and footer. Okay, so you see, so basically when we are loading login PHP, since it's not submitted yet, the only things you are seeing is whatever is in the login page inc.php. It has login page inc.php has header, footer, and some fields. Okay. Okay. So let's try to do login. Okay, so I can see all the users here. Okay, I can remember the password for this account, Barack Obama. So let's try to log in using that account. Password, let me put a wrong password, or let me just keep it empty and see what happens. Okay, so basically what happened is you forgot to enter your password. Okay, so basically what's happening is I'm here, right? This one becomes true because I have already submitted. And then these files get triggered. Okay, so these files get triggered and some errors gets generated. So let's go to our slide to see, talk about the other pages, and then we'll come back. Okay, so login page inc, you saw it. Okay, next is let me show you the examples and then come back to the slide. I think that would be easier. So let me put the right password. Okay, so you see I have successfully logged in. Now what changes do you see here? You see before I could see login here. After I did the login, it changed to log out. So I can see a log out here and I can see a log out here as well. So let's see what happened when I pushed or pressed submit. Okay, so once I pressed submit, server request method equals to post. Okay, so once I clicked submit, what happened? So basically I was seeing this page, right? Login page inc. And then once I clicked submit, the method became post and the action is login.php. That means this script is going to be triggered, login.php. Okay, inside login.php, this one got triggered. Now it checked if the request method is post, which is true. So it now loads these two files. One is login functions inc.php and MySQL connection connect.php. So let's go and see what login function does. Okay, so login function has different functions defined in it. Okay, so okay, so basically it has it's like it works as a library, right? So it has two functions in it: redirect to user and check login. So it has two functions in it. So by loading these login functions.inc means now I can call any of these two functions. Either I can call redirect user or I can call check login. So let's see which one we are calling. So basically what we did is we called check login, right? And inside check login, it takes how many parameters it takes? Check login takes 3 parameters. The connection object, email, and password. So the default value is empty. Okay. Yep. So default value is empty. Okay. So let's go here. So from the submission, we have something in this variable post email, right? And then post password. We have something here. So basically we get here, we have some email and password. So it will check if you already have put an email address. If you haven't put email address, it will say you forgot to enter your email address, or it will check if you have put some password. So basically this is the validation phase. So you are validating if you have put all the information correctly. If you have forgot to put your password, it will give you a message. Okay, and the errors would be filled up if there is some, if you have forgotten to put your email or password, then the errors are going to be filled up. Okay, and if there is errors, then okay, it will return false with errors. But in case you don't have errors, that means everything is okay and errors is empty. That means you have correctly put your username and password or email and password. In that case, it will what it will do is it will, from the database, it will read the row which has that email and that password. Okay, and then it will run the query using the database connection object, and okay, so basically what it will do is again is the email and password. So if there is a real entry in the database with that email and that password, it will fetch that data. Okay, and but if you have put a wrong password, what will happen? What will happen is it won't be able to fetch any data, right? Because it's looking for a row where it has this email and the password that you put in the form, right? So that means it actually checked this email and whatever password you had put, right? And try to fetch the data based on that email and that password, and then run the query. If your email or password is wrong, what will happen? It won't return anything, right? The database doesn't have anything with that data. So the number of rows would be 0, right? So it will say if the number of rows are 0, it will go to else. It will tell you that the email address and the password entered do not match. Okay. Otherwise, what will happen? Otherwise, it will return true and it will return the data that you fetched from the database. Okay, clear? Okay, so this means if you got one row, that means, yeah, your login is now successful. Okay, let's go back to the login page. So basically, I loaded login functions PHP file, then I got access to check login. I got my database connection object from here, okay? and then using the check login function and passing the database connection object and the email variable and the password variable that I got from here, right? I run the check login function, and if so, what does the check login function return? Either it returns true and the data, or it returns false and the errors. Okay, so it checks. So either it returns true here and the data, so the data can contain the actual row from the database, or it can contain the error message and false. Okay, so it will check if this variable is true, that means the login was successful. If the login is successful, then what do I have to do? Now I have to set the cookies, right? Because logging in into website means what? It means that I want to, even if I actually change pages, I want my session or cookies to exist, right? Because whenever you log into Amazon.com, if you go to a product page and you are actually forgotten, that's not you want, right? You want to be remembered until you are in the website. So if the login is successful, then we are using these functions, set cookie. Okay, now your data, what does, in case of successful login, what does this data have? This has the information that you read from the database, right? So based on that information, it sets two variables, user ID. User ID is set to whatever you get user ID from your database. And then you name another cookie variable, first name, and you fill it with whatever first name you got from the database. Okay. Okay. Now set cookie function can have can take up to 7 parameters. The first parameter is the variable name for the cookie, or the cookie name. The second parameter is the value for that cookie. So you got this value from the database, right? Returned here. You assign this value to this cookie. The third variable is how long you want this cookie to be alive. So here I put like 3600 seconds. That means 1 hour. So after 1 hour, you would be logged out automatically. I guess like about when I actually try to log into my here. When I log in here, and if I am inactive for a long time, what I say is I'm logged out. That means if this page has a login session, save some cookie, that cookie has some expiration. So that is what you set here. So the expiration is the current time plus 3600 seconds. Okay, this is how you're setting the cookie. And after that, what you're doing is you're calling another function, redirect user to logged-in.php. Okay, so what this function is, redirect user. So this is another function that we got from this by loading these functions.php. Let's go there. So one of the functions was check login. We used that. The another function that we can use is redirect user. So redirect user takes one parameter, and there is a default value for the parameter. And as you know, default value for the parameter means that if you don't put any parameter and call this function, it will use the default parameter. But if you have passed a real parameter inside, value inside, it will use that value. So what happens in the login page? What happens in the login page is if the login is successful, you set two cookies and then redirect the page to logged-in.php. So basically you are not keeping it empty, you are sending a value. That means when this function actually gets called, now it has the value of loggedin.php. Okay, so what loggedin.php does is, uh, so basically what happens is inside you build a URL. How do you build URL is, you already know which, you know your HTTP host and other things, and then you append the variable here. So in our case, what did we pass? We passed loggedin.php, right? So we appended loggedin.php, and finally we called header. I will talk about the header function. So basically, so in short, loggedin.php, the page will be redirected to loggedin.php. So let's go and see inside here. Okay, so after logging in, you see that we have been redirected to loggedin.php. Okay. Now you see, even if I change pages, still I am in the same session. That means this is not going away. I'm logged in here. So still I'm logged in. Why? Because of the cookies that I set. Now if I click logged out, now it says you are logged out, Barak. And it changes to login, right? I can log in again. Let's see. So I'm in login.php page again. Let's log in again. Log in. Okay. Password doesn't match. Yeah. So I have successfully logged in again. And now you see, now it has changed to log out. Okay. So let's go to our slide. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the two functions that we loaded, right? So those two functions were inside the login functions inc.php. What those two functions did, there were two functions, like one was check login and the other one was redirect user. So basically, with the check login, we confirmed that an email address was provided, a password was provided, and we confirmed that the provided email address and password match those stored in the database, right? So that one was the functionality of check login. So basically, we got two functions from these login by loading these login functions.inc.php, and one of the functions were check login. We used them. This one checked whether your email and password has been entered, and if they are entered, if they match the database. The other function was redirect user, right? And it has a default value of index.php. Okay. So redirect user, this function determines the absolute URL and redirects the user there. It took one argument where the argument is like where the page is to be redirected to. Okay. So Okay, so we inside that function, you saw that we had built in the redirect page, right? It had built an URI. So the URI had multiple parts. One is this global variable, then there was another global variable, right? So this slide actually explains those global variables. Underscore dollar underscore server HTTP post. And then there was dollar underscore server PHP self. So PHP, this one, the second one, refers to the current script, including the directory name. The whole value would be like this, some directory and then page.php. And server.host, this one assigns, so in our case, it would be just localhost, right? So basically, what we are doing here is we are actually building a URI. So from the login page, we passed what? We passed login.php, logged-in.php. And once the redirect user function was called, it actually built a whole URI. How? It took the local host, then it got the directory name, which the current directory is, and then it added this dollar page value of the dollar page variable. What was the value of the dollar page variable? What was the value that we passed? This is the variable, right? This is the value, right? Logged in.php. So overall, it will actually, this URL will look something like this. It will be like HTTP, then localhost, right? It will get it from here. Then it will take week 11. Why? It will get it from here, right? And finally, it will add this thing. It will add this dollar page. So logged in.php. Okay. So you are building the URL. So the URL would be here. And then finally you call the header function. And header function actually takes the value of the URL and redirects you there. So what does the header function do? Let's see here. The redirection for with header. Okay. So many pages will end up redirecting the user from one page to another. For example, upon successful login, the user will be taken to logged-in.php. If a user accesses logged-in.php and they aren't logged in, they should be taken to index.php. The syntax is location, colon, and then URI. And then you put exit. So that's exactly what we did here. So you built an URI here, and then you call header function. So basically now, once this header function will be called, it will take you to logged-in.php and then you exit. Okay. So let's see what logged-in.php do. So you are now in logged-in.php. Let's go inside logged-in.php. Okay, so just to recap, I was first here, right? Login page.inc.php. Then I clicked submit. It took me to login.php, right? Okay. Login.php, what does it do? It checks whether the page is already submitted, right? If it's submitted, it now loads this file, login functions.inc.php. It creates a connection. Then by loading this function, it gets two functions like check login and redirect user. So it uses the check login, checks again is the email and password, runs the script, right? No, it actually does the validation, right? And inside this, check login, it does the validation and then reads from the database. If the read is successful, it returns true with the data. If the read is not successful, it returns false with error messages. Okay, so I was here, right? So either this is true or this is false. And then I have data. If it's true, I have the row of data. If it's false, I have empty. Then it checks if the login was successful, if it was true. If it was true, it sets cookie. I haven't discussed in details yet. Otherwise, it just says errors. It actually otherwise what it does is it assigns the error data into the error variable, and finally it shows the login page inc PHP again. So if I go to login page inc again, now what will happen is this time the errors is no longer empty, right? So it will show you the errors as well as the login form data again, right? Okay. Otherwise, if the login is successful, it will redirect you to loggedin.php. Okay. So how the redirection works? Redirection calls this redirect user. It builds a URI and then calls this header function. The header function actually takes you to this URI. Okay. Yes. Okay. So after going to that URI, what happens? Now you see, now the cookie comes in picture. Once your login was successful, you have already set this cookie, right? You see, you have set a cookie named user ID, filled it with some data that you got from the database, right? So once you got into a logged in page, it will check if that cookie is empty, is set or not, right? If it's not set, that means your login wasn't successful. Then what? Or your cookie has expired, right? There might be two cases. Your cookie is expired or your login wasn't successful. In that case, what happens? Redirect user, that is called again from inside login. Right? Let me change this. Okay. To use the redirect user, I actually need to load this file again, right? This time you see it sends empty. It doesn't send anything. So what happens if you don't send anything? If you don't send anything, the default value index.php that will be used, right? So this time you will be redirected to index.php, right? So that is exactly what we are saying here. So if a user accesses loggedin.php and they aren't logged in, they should be taken to index.php. Okay. So if you are logged in, then yes, fine. You stay in loggedin.php. If you are not logged in, then you will be taken to index.php. We can actually check that here. So I'm not logged in. So just manually, let's try to access this PHP file. And you see, since I'm not logged in, it doesn't have anything in the cookie, right? No cookie set because I'm not logged in. And I'm taken to index.php. Now let's try to log in and see what happens. Again with the same password, username. I'm logging in, right? This time it's taking me to loggedin.php and it doesn't any longer take me to index.php because now my cookie is set, right? Now it comes here in the logged-in.php and says, oh, okay, cookie is set, so it's fine. I don't need to redirect him, right? What it does is it just shows the header file, and also from the cookie, it shows my first name. It says you are now logged in. Let's see, yeah. So it says you are now logged in. So I think now you have a better understanding how the cookie. So after the successful login, you are actually setting the cookie variable, and because of that cookie, now this page logged-in.php checks if the cookie is set. If the cookie is set, it will show you a welcome message and keep you in the same page. But if the cookie wasn't set, we tried to just try to directly load this thing, right? In that case, it redirects you to index.php. Okay, so we are now logged in, and once we are logged in, what happens? Some cookies have been set, right? And where do we get this value, Barak? This one we get from a set cookie. So from here, right? So this is set, right? We have values inside it. Where do we put these values? We put these values here, right? Once we are able to get correct data from the database, we set these user ID and first name cookies. Okay. Okay, so cookies are a way for a server to store information on the user's machine. So this is, here's one thing, like all these PHP scripts, where are they running? They're running in the server, right? So I'm setting the cookies also in the server, but basically what will happen is the server will send these cookies to my machine, my client, and my web browser. So what is my client? My client is my web browser, right? So my web browser. So everything, when I am actually showing this example, my server is also running on my same machine, right? But there is a difference. When I'm actually running this script, I am actually running this in the server, not in my machine. But my client is my web browser. So basically my server is setting the cookies and sending it to my client, that is my web browser. Now my web browser will remember me and in my private session, and until I log out, it will remember me, or until the cookie expires. So again, cookies are a way for a server. So whatever I showed you in PHP, where is it happening? It's happening in the server, right? Although the server is installed in my local machine, but the server could be somewhere else. So the cookies are actually set in the server and then sent to the user's machine. This is one way that a site can remember or track a user over the course of a visit. Think of a cookie as being a name tag. You tell the server your name and it gives you a sticker to wear. Then it can know who you are by referring that name tag, right? So next time, so your server set up some cookies, sends those cookies to you. Next time you just present these cookies to your server and your server will recognize you. That's it. Just to avoid confusion, make sure that in our case, when we are actually showing the examples here, basically there is a server client communication and both of them are in my machine. My server is actually here. Here is my server running inside my own machine. But this browser is my client. Okay. So basically the cookies were set inside the server. And now the cookies were sent to my client. Now my client uses these cookies as tokens or something to show the server, okay, I have these cookies, and the server says, okay, I gave you these cookies, I recognize you. That's it. Setting cookies. Cookies must be sent from server to the client prior to any other information. Should the server attempt to send a cookie after the web browser has already received an HTML, even an extraneous white space, an error message will result. So how does the server client communication works? So first we type an address in our web browser, right? So suppose if I say like google.com. Okay, and you see if I am in google.com, what happens? Already I am actually logged in here. How that happened? So once I typed google.com, this request was sent where? To Google server, right? Google server was running something and it gave me some cookies in the past. I stored those cookies, and next time when I am actually requesting the Google server, I'm presenting these cookies, and Google server actually now recognizes these cookies and it recognizes me. So that's how I'm still logged in. And the other thing is, once I request something from Google, Google sends me back this page, right? But before sending me these HTML or anything, before sending any response, first of all, it has to send me the cookies and then other things. So that's also mentioned here. So should the server attempt to send a cookie after the web browser has already received an HTML, even an extraneous white space, an error message will result. Okay. So the function to set cookie is set cookie. First parameter is the name of the cookie, and second parameter is the value. Just to like this. So the first parameter was the user ID. So the cookie name was the user ID, and the value was $data user ID that we got from the database. First parameter is first name and $data first name. Okay. So this is simply what we saw from login.php. If the database connection was successful and if the email and password was correct, then we got some data, and also true here. If it was true, then we set cookies. We set two cookies, user ID and first name, and we've set values for them. So the values were from here, from data. Inside that data, since we read a row, this user ID came from where? It came from okay, so we're running. Okay, so it came from here, right? User ID, data user ID, and the first name came from data first name. So basically, inside data, I have passed everything from here, and then it parsed it and put them in these things and set them to these two cookies, user ID and first name. Okay, so here is like, don't confuse this first name with this first name. This is $data first name. So this one is coming from where? This is coming from this database, right? And this first name, just this first name is the cookie name. So I could name it any other thing. So first name, I could name it any other thing. First N something, user ID, UID. I could name my cookie anything. Okay, so you have set the cookies, and then how do you access the cookies? So here you set one cookie, named it as UID. How do you access it? It's simple, $_cookie, and then put UID. That's it. Okay. So you set cookie UID, and then this would refer to $_cookie UID. And this $_cookie is a super global variable. So that's exactly what we had checked here in the logged in function, right? In the logged in PHP. So it checked if the user ID, the cookie named user ID is already set. If it's already set, what does it mean? It means that login was successful, right? If it wasn't set, then okay. Okay, if it was set, then this would have been false, right? So, and then we would have come here and show the first name. So it said like you are now logged in Barack. But if it wasn't set, user ID wasn't set, cookie user ID, before I could come here, I would have got redirected. Okay. Okay, so accessing cookies. Okay, setting cookie parameters. Set cookie function can take up to 5 more parameters. So we showed you just 2, name and value, right? And also 3, expiration. Here we had put some expiration. So we had put 3600 seconds from now. That means we have set an expiration of how much? 1 hour for this cookie. And then path, host, secure, HTTP only. Just for details, go through your textbook. But for the examples, we'll just use these 3. Expiration is the time for a cookie to exist in seconds. So in the example that I showed you, the expiration is 3600 seconds. Path and host are used to limit a cookie to a specific folder within a website. So suppose you want your cookie to be useful only inside specific folders of a web page. You don't want your cookie to be valid throughout every page in the website. In that case, you can use this path and host parameter values to mention which folders you want the cookie to be alive in. Secure tells you whether a cookie should be sent over to a secure HTTPS connection. Yeah, so the cookie is sent from the server to the client, right? So this one just defines whether the cookie should be sent from the server to client through a secured channel or not. And finally, HTTP only, this is a Boolean variable. This makes cookie only accessible through HTTP. So set a cookie to exist for 1 hour. We already saw this, right? There is some guidelines for cookie expiration. If the cookie should last just as the session, do not set an expiration time. So if you don't have any expiration time, what happens is once the session is gone, so basically here, you say I'm logged in. If I just close this page, my session is gone. So cookie will be expired if I don't have any expiration time. But if I have an expiration time set, suppose 1 hour, even I close this and open again, still my cookie would be valid. So it's important to make sure that if you want your cookies to be gone once you close your page, then you don't put any expiration date. Otherwise if you know that, okay, I need whatever happens in between these 1 hour, if the session is gone, new session is created, still I want the same cookie to be valid, then put expiration date. Finally, how to delete a cookie. Now, set cookie function can take up to 7 arguments. Only one is actually required for the cookie name, right? So you see, it took like 7 arguments, right? Up to 7 arguments. The first one is the name. So if you call this function set cookie and then just the name, what happens is if already there was a cookie with the same name, that one will actually got deleted. So this is the way to delete a cookie, is again using the set cookie. But so suppose for this example, if I call like set cookie again, so I say set cookie and then just user ID. Then what will happen is the cookie that was set here would be overwritten, so that would be gone. You can also set an expiration date that is in the past. So that is another way to delete your cookie. So that means instead of 1 hour from now, you set a date to 1 hour from in the past, and then your cookie is gone. I think if you are already practicing, you have in the previous weeks, you had this similar kind of site, right? Only difference is now we have added a login and log out thing. So you see now I am logged out. I can log in again. So basically by login means you have to log in using one of these data. So you can actually add a user here, password, and then do login using that email address and password. So make sure that you are able to log in and log out. So let's do a login one more time. Okay, so I logged in. Some cookies were set, and until I have a, what do I have? I have a cookie time out of 1 hour, so it's fine. So I'm in the same, so I'm logged in until I do what? Until I log out. Okay, now I'm logged out. Okay, so one thing here, once I logged out, it takes me to index.php. What's happening in logout? Okay, so let's first do login. Okay, and then log out. Okay, if it's logged out, we see like you are now logged out, Barak. That's the thing. But if I refresh, it takes me to index.php. So let's go and check here what's happening in logout.php. Okay, so it actually depends on what I'm doing here. So first of all, if no cookie is present, so when I was first logging out, right, what was happening? There was some cookie present, right? That's why this part became false. And I came here and I showed this. You are now logged out, Barak, right? Okay. But after next time when I actually refreshed, now this cookie is gone, or also this user ID cookie is gone. Now this one becomes true, right? This one becomes true. So it takes me to, it loads this login functions inc PHP. It does redirect user with an empty parameter. We already saw what happens if it has an empty parameter, right? It takes the index.php, and that's why it took us to index.php. And after that, okay, so one thing to tell you here, like, yeah, and then, yep. So it took me to index.php. So if no cookie is present, we redirect it. Okay. If no cookie is present, we redirect it to index.php. If some cookie is present, it expires the cookies. And finally, it shows like you're logged out if the cookie is present. Okay, so that's it